Janet Diane Moya Swerdlow. Welcome to the Expansions News Podcast for the very first week of November 2016. Now, before I get into the news, I want to tell you that the Polish event was absolutely fabulous. In fact, hundreds of people came from all over Europe to attend Exposing the Truth conference, and apparently there was standing room only, and some people could not even get into the event because it was so full. And Stuart's personal consultations were totally sold out. He will be back in April of 2017 for the next Exposing the Truth conference. People are already signing up for the conference as well as for personal consultations in April 2017. So if you want to be sure that you have a place in the event, or that they get a venue that's bigger than the last one, and you want to be sure you get a personal consultation with him, then please contact our sponsor. All that information is on the website and on Facebook. So please go there, find it, and get your place taken care of, because April will be here before you know it. So, moving along with the news. Internationally, kind of. Mostly here at home in the U.S., we have our elections that are right around the corner. So on the international scene, which is why I'm bringing that up, this was so odd to me, and I'm interested to know if any of you have heard of these things. So I'll just put this out there for you, that apparently there are international observers who are going to come here and watch the U.S. elections. Now, I have never heard of this before. It doesn't mean it didn't happen, but I didn't hear about it. So if you've heard of it, let me know. Now, this article that I'm going to be referring to, apparently the reporters who put this together were actually in Hong Kong and asking the local people there their opinion about the U.S. presidential election. And the person that they interviewed claimed that she does not agree that with Donald Trump's charge that the vote across the country will be rigged. She says, quote, "He just wants to only accept the election result if he wins the election." Then they went to, of all places, Ukraine's capital of Kiev, and talked to a 46-year-old sociologist there. And this sociologist and a manager, of what it doesn't say, referred to the contested 2000 U.S. presidential election, where Democratic nominee Al Gore won the national popular vote, but lost the electoral vote after the U.S. Supreme Court ruled against a recount in Florida. He says, quote, "Americans had rigged elections during Bush Jr. times." Then they went to Lyon, France, and they said there that skepticism is strong about Trump's argument of being a victim. There was a resident of Lyon that said, quote, "I think that he is someone who is used to rigging the game in his favor, so I think that he's in a bad position to say this." Now, it says, according to this article, that this year representatives from 2 international organizations will fan out across the country to observe American democracy in action at the local polling stations. Well, how are they going to do this? This makes no sense. The first one is called the Organization for Security and Cooperation in Europe. Apparently, they announced a timeline earlier in October where they are going to deploy they're going to deploy hundreds more observers than it has at any time since it began watching the U.S. elections in 2002. I've never heard of any international organizations watching the U.S. elections. Then there's another organization called the Organization for American States that also says it will send a delegation for the first time to witness the presidential elections. How and where are they going to do this? It says the plans by the 2 international organizations come amid claims by both major party presidential candidates of outside meddling. Trump claims that the election will be affixed against him and has called on his supporters to act as independent observers at local stations. Again, what does that mean? How? Democratic nominee Hillary Clinton accuses the Russian government of interfering with the presidential race because she says Trump's presidency will be more accommodating to moves such as Moscow's annexation of Crimea, which is part of the Ukraine, of course. The OSCE generally deploys observers to countries where there is a belief that the election process can be improved, which generally means third world countries. Following the 2012 U.S. election, OSCE observers reported glitches and cited issues that included vote counting, excluded election observers, and confusing voting processes. Again, never heard of this organization, didn't know they were here, and the fact that they're bringing in international community to monitor U.S. elections is telling you the status of what's happening to the U.S. And then it goes on to say, the substantial increase of OSCE observers for this U.S. election comes from an assessment and recommendations made last May, and apparently the OSCE spokesman is named Thomas Reimer. It says the recommendations came after organization officials spoke with U.S. state election officials, as well as representatives from political parties, the news media, and non-governmental organizations. And again, I never heard about this. And he was speaking by telephone from Montenegro. Well, Montenegro I've been to. It's a very, very small country in Eastern Europe, so what's happening? Anyway, these observers evaluate issues such as voter registration, identification laws, electronic voting machines, and whether the news media provides accurate and objective information to the public. Again, how do they do this and who's authorizing them? Doesn't make sense. The OSCE's plans call for 11 election core experts who are already working in Washington, D.C. Then they have another 26 observers from 7 European countries arriving mid-October. I guess they've arrived, it's first week in November, and deploying, that sounds like a military term, deploying across the U.S. And then they said on November 4, about 300 more short-term observers will arrive, be briefed, and then dispatched across the country. Reimer did not say where the observers will be. Then earlier in October, the Associated Press reported that at least 3 U.S. states have rejected Russian requests to send their own monitors to observe the polling process. The National Conference of State Legislatures says 12 U.S. states forbid international observers. Again, makes no sense to me. Why are we having all these outsiders come in the middle of our elections? So they're saying something about the status of the U.S., they're saying something most likely about the UN interference, and if something happens to the elections, what's going to happen? I mean, it's bizarre. They're setting us up for something. I just say be sure you use a lot of protection on November 8th, which is voting day, and probably shortly thereafter. And then, interestingly enough, you might have read that in Washington, D.C., Donald Trump has just opened up a mile away from the White House a $200 million presidential-themed hotel. So I thought that was a little bizarre as well, considering everything that's going on. And you also might have heard about Donald Trump's new campaign manager back in 2013 on an episode of PBS called To the Contrary. During a roundtable discussion, made a comment about rape would not exist if women were stronger. Now, I've been telling you this for the last year or so, that word rape is just been thrown all over the place, and rape is part of New World religion. So they're bringing that up again. And here we go. This is her statement, quote, "If we were physiologically, not mentally, emotionally, professionally, equal to men, if we were physiologically as strong as men, rape would not exist. You would be able to defend yourself and fight him off." And the article goes on to say, that's unquote, the article goes on to say her comment does not appear to take into account male victims of rape and sexual assault, and I'm adding, or children. So again, I thought this is very strange that this is brought up at this time. Then we have Philippines leader Rodrigo Duterte saying it's time to say goodbye to the U.S. He announced his country's separation from the U.S. while visiting Beijing and remarked, "It's time to say goodbye, my friend. America has lost now," he said in China's Great Hall of the People. "I've realigned myself and your ideological flow, and maybe I will go to Russia to talk to Putin and tell him that there are 3 of us against the world. China, Philippines, and Russia. It's the only way." He concluded with, "No more American interference, no more American exercises. What for? Oh," and then he adds, "I will not go to America anymore. I will just be insulted there." And then continuing on with his quote, "Though we come to your country close to winter, it is the springtime of our relationship." End quote. And then Duterte noted that he is Chinese, as are a quarter of his people, and he said the only hope for the future economic success of his country was China. And then the other interesting thing they added at the tail end of this article, they said that 200 Filipino businessmen were also there for this historic summit with China. So I thought, well, something is going on there. We'll see. And then, speaking of strange alignments, this is something that Stuart actually spoke about when he visited Finland. But this article says, it's titled, "Could Finland Become the Next Ukraine?" Because if you know your history, which Stuart tells you about, and I don't know if you've read True World History, Humanity's Saga, there's a lot of good information in here. Stuart, when he was in Finland, actually told them that he believed that the Russians would try to bring Finland back into the Soviet Union. And he was telling me and you that a lot of Russian people have emigrated to Finland. And so it's like everything else. So it's filled with Russian people. It's right on the border, and a lot of people go back and forth freely between the two countries. So there's the news article, "Could Finland become the next Ukraine?" Now apparently, Helsinki officials are becoming anxious over Russia questioning the legality of its independence, which they supposedly received in 1917. Now they're saying maybe that wasn't done quite the right way, and Finland is part of Russia. There are security concerns following Russia's annexation of Crimea and the movement of nuclear-capable missiles in the Balkan Sea. So, apparently there have been questions raised in Russia about whether the independence of Finland was legal or not. This happened 100 years ago. And Finland and Estonia accused Russian fighter jets of violating their airspace recently, with Finnish jets twice scrambled after Russian Su-27 planes were reportedly detected over the Gulf of Finland. The Kremlin denies this. Okay, and then this is something I've told you about before, but I'm bringing it up because I've heard it again. This is about citizen scientists helping to locate spiders on Mars. Now again, I question the terminology, not the article. Citizen scientists. Why are they saying that? It doesn't sound like a democratic term to me. It sounds like a communist term. Citizen scientists, really. It says more than 1 million people volunteer on this website, and at least 111 scientific publications were possible thanks to the help of citizen scientists. So apparently researchers sought the help of 10,000 volunteers to look at patterns on Mars. And that's the point of the article, but my point is the term citizen scientist. It is diluting a true scientist, in my opinion. Now, this was an interesting article about a mysterious piece of aluminum that Romania says and proves that UFOs visited Earth 250,000 years ago. Now, Romania officials really didn't exactly say it proved it, but they do say that it is 250,000 years ago. And it says here that the metallic aluminum was not produced by humans until 200 years ago. So therefore, if it's 250,000 years old, who produced it? So I think that's very interesting. And then someone on my Facebook page sent me this article about Pacific Islanders. It says Melanesians, let's see, the island peoples of Melanesia have a distinct genetic ancestry. Apparently, it shows that their ancestors bred with Neanderthals and Denisovans, which we've talked about before, and those were found in, I think, Russia not too long ago. Or at least identified, we'll say in Russia, yes. And that was actually identified from a single finger bone and a few teeth from a cave in Russia. So now we have that. So we have two genetics. And then they said that analysis showed that their ancestors bred with those two groups, but there is genetic evidence of a third unknown group of human species, and this third group could add another twist in the tale of human evolution. That was an interesting story. Then we have this one. Did a Loch Ness monster sink a German U-boat? Apparently, a German ship and its crew were discovered off of the Scottish coast in 1918, and the ship's captain claimed that they had been attacked by a sea monster. So the episode has been told as the Loch Ness Monster Attack. The legend of the UB-85 says that a huge sea monster with glistening teeth and large eyes attacked it. And apparently marine engineers who were laying a power line believe that they have found this UB-85. And let's see. According to the local stories, when the commanding officer was questioned why he had been cruising on the surface, he says that the U-boat had been recharging the batteries at night when the beast emerged from the sea. He describes the creature with large eyes set in a horny sort of skull and teeth seen glistening in the moonlight. The men began firing at the monster, which refused to let go of the forward gun mount. So finally, after, I guess, extensive attack, the monster finally let go and left. But the ship was the U-boat was badly damaged, unable to submerge. And so the captain said to the British, "That is why you were able to catch us on the surface." And there's a man named Gary Campbell who calls himself the keeper of the Loch Ness Monster Official Sightings Register, believes that there could be some truth in this story. He says that the World War I report from the captain of the British ship HMS Hillary a year earlier makes it clear that seafarers were well aware of large sea monsters that could harm their ships, and the area where the U-boat sank had a history of sea monster sightings. So the person, Scottish Power, I guess that's the company, then Peter Roper was the person working for Scottish Power, says, "The images from the subsea scans are incredibly detailed, but we need to be aware of what lies beneath. In all the years I have been building power lines, this is the most extraordinary discovery." And speaking of under the sea, hundreds of deep sea vents are found spewing methane off the west coast of the U.S. According to Robert Ballard, founder and director of the Ocean Exploration Trust in Connecticut, he says it appears that the entire coast off Washington, Oregon, and California is a giant methane seep. So, let's see what that says. I would say something about volcanic underwater activity. So, we'll see what happens off the coast. And then this was an interesting story, I thought, because again, whether you agree with it or not, it doesn't really matter, but in the economic society that we live in here in the U.S., it's about supply and demand. Well, there was a video on that is teaching children about income inequality. And they said that that's growing in the U.S. in the last 30 years. So they talk about what a banker makes versus what a custodian makes, and how that they're both working the same hours. And they're teaching the children how that this is, terrible because it's not equal. And so somebody who's a custodian has to work like 1,000 years to make 1 year of a salary of what a banker makes. Now, they're not talking about the global elite like Trump and Hillary Clinton, who make billions of dollars a year. They're talking about just the people in the bottom part of the pyramid who are kind of, you have to get your education and so on and so forth. So if they're imprinting the children about income inequality, that's telling you what they have planned for society as it moves along. Now here's something else that's interesting, because I've been talking to you about this, again, for the last couple of years, and it's coming to fruition. This is a report on artificial intelligence, how it's changing the world, and apparently the Obama administration released a 60-page report titled "Preparing for the Future of Artificial Intelligence" recently. And here they're talking about how it's going to affect different fields such as health, education, and the environment, and proposes ways in which industry and government can work together to advance the public good. So, 3 days after the White House report was issued, AI researcher Kate Devlin was in New York City, and next to her on the lecture podium stood an NSFW image, which was a scantily clad, human-sized sex doll from a company called Real Doll. She said that they sell these to a wide range of people, and the most frequent request they get is to embed AI into these dolls. Apparently, Kate Devlin teaches at the University of London, and her research focuses on cognition, gender, and sexuality as they relate to modern machines like companion robots. She says that there's the matter of Pepper, who's a humanoid robot from Japan that they claim can read human emotions through facial cues and vocal tones. Pepper is designed to be a companion robot. However, if you have sex with Pepper, then you void her contract and void the warranty. So if you never thought about having sex with Pepper, because it's in there, I guess you're going to think about it, because that's what's putting it in your head. Then we have another researcher, Kathleen Richardson, who's a senior research fellow in the ethics of robotics at De Montfort University. She founded a group called Campaign Against Sex Robots back in 2015. And she says that the concept of sex robots echoes cultural patterns of ownership and slavery. She said that persons are treated like things and things are treated like persons. Now to me, this is what I've been telling you about mind control. They control your mind and they confuse you. You don't know what's what, what's up, what's down, what's real, what's not, what's a person, what's a robot. Devlin says, whether people think it's a good idea or not, it's already out there because there's a demand for it. Then back in 2007, we have artificial intelligence researcher David Levy from the University of Maastricht, who told Live Science that people could be marrying robots and consummating their vows by 2050. He said it might not appeal at first, but once you have a story like I had a sex with robot and it was great, he says people will jump on the bandwagon, and I agree with him, it's true. In his PhD thesis called Intimate Relationships with Artificial Partners, Levy stated that the more human-like robots become in terms of personality, function, and appearance, the more likely they are to form romantic partners for real people. He says it may sound a little weird, but it isn't. Love and sex with robots are inevitable. And then we have Dr. Ian Pearson wrote a report produced for online sex shop called Bondara. He said, quote, brothels and strip clubs will soon include robots, and they will be a specific fetish for some people, as well as a potentially cheaper replacement for real-life interaction. He said advances in sex tech will provide opportunities for those that otherwise wouldn't have them, and he reports that by 2050, that human-robot sex will overtake sex with human-human, and this is what I've been telling you, so I thought that was interesting. Then we have Matt McMullen, who's CEO of Love Doll, which manufactures Real Doll, is making a new toy that will blink open its mouth and even have a chat with you. The ultimate aim is to create a doll that appears to behave as if she enjoys the act of sex. And I want to put in here too, and I reported on this before, that they also have male sex dolls too. So not just dolls for women, but they have dolls for men, and vice versa, back and forth. So anyway, that's what's happening. And Dr. Kathleen Richardson, who I mentioned, she said that it's a disturbing trend that needs to be stopped. We think that the creation of such robots will contribute to the detrimental relationships between men and women, adults and children, men, and women, like though you think. And now apparently there's a new television show coming out called Westworld. Apparently it's a Sky Atlantic TV drama, and the storyline is lifelike robots are abused for human pleasure, which include saloon girls that are raped, townsfolk pumped full of bullets, and Native Americans that are actually scalped. So, it says that this has evoked has provoked a host of disturbing questions about violence, sexual exploitation, and when exactly this world of near-human robots will become a reality. And in this drama, lifelike robots are abused for human, I'm going to put this one in quotes, pleasure. It says in December, the Second International Congress on Love and Sex with Robots, can you believe this, is taking place at Goldsmiths University in London, and apparently there was one scheduled last year in Malaysia, but the chief of police in Kuala Lumpur decreed that the subject was immoral and announced that he would arrest the organizers and put them in jail, so they canceled that one. Let's see, and then this person goes on to say, who wrote this article, that the goal is to have intimate encounters with the technology, to fall in love with the technology, to have sex with robots, and to marry them. And if vibrators are not cheating, then why would sex with a robot be considered cheating? And this person believes that sex with robots will be a boon to society because sex robots could act as sex therapists. And then he goes on to say that there are some people who are downright lonely. He says they will eradicate a huge void in the lives of the lonely, unloved people, creating emotional and sexual satisfaction for them in place of the loneliness and sexual frustration which blights their lives. He says there are millions of people who are lonely. They have no one to love and no one who loves them. They might be shy. They might have psychological or psychosexual hang-ups. So get this one. They might be socially unacceptable. They might be ugly. Personal hygiene might be a problem. They might be lacking in social skills. They might be unable to make interesting, amusing conversation at the right level for those who they find attractive. They might be socially challenged people. And the question to ask is not, why is it better to love or have sex with a robot than with another human? But the question should be, is it better to love or have sex with a robot to have no sex or love at all? So again, I think this is totally bizarre, but this is where society is heading. Because they want you isolated. They don't want you interacting with other humans. They don't want you dealing with yourself. It's better just to ignore that you have any issues. It's like, why take a bath when you can be dirty and have sex with a robot? The robot doesn't care. She probably likes your smell is good when you need a bath. So don't work on yourself. Please, just go get a robot. And if you're ugly, who thinks you're ugly? Really, everybody is different. I have seen people from all walks of life, all shapes and forms, all ages, with partners. So if you don't have a partner, it's not because of any of this. I just think this is bizarre. And of course, as we all know these days, life is bizarre. But back to the news. We have this one. I thought this was kind of an interesting story. This is about a book called Modern Mother's Handbook that apparently Kate Middleton snapped it up, and then she wrote a fan letter to the author saying how wonderful it is and how she uses it while she raises her children. Well, first of all, let's think of her billions of dollars and her billions of servants, and that's who's raising her children, other than when she holds them for photo opportunities. But anyway, apparently, according to the author, now this is the part that got me. This is a hard-to-find author, according to the Daily Mail, which was my source for this. This hard-to-find author has chosen to be anonymous. Now, first of all, why would you write a book like this and be anonymous? Second of all, if the Duchess, or I guess she's a princess now, whatever she is, Princess Kate Middleton, is buying your book, wouldn't you want the whole world to know? Wouldn't you be thrilled? So, who really wrote this book? And what I want to know is what's really in this book. Because if this is going to be the new thing that mothers are buying, then obviously there is something in here that you're reprogramming your children to do. And that's what they want you to read. Not only did Kate Middleton snap up her book, she's saying, but she also says, I guess it's a she that wrote it, a lot of actresses tracked down the book after they learned that Kate had read it. And then they're calling her the handbook guru, would not name names, but the DailyMail.com has learned that Drew Barrymore and Chrissy Teigen have looked over the book. What does that mean? They looked over it while they were looking at, their bodies in some mirror taking a selfie? I don't know. The author believes that in the past, stars have followed parenting fads, but several want to return to old-fashioned ways. Teaching children good old-fashioned values and morals is paramount to any young person's mental health. We often forget that the simplest time-worn parenting methods like writing thank you cards and eating what's put in front of you are the best. I guess this is old-fashioned values, really. I mean, seriously? And she doesn't even have a name. She's anonymous. And this is what Stuart and I tell you. We are out there with our names every day, having people throw all kinds of sticks and stones at us. We're still who we are, and you know who we are. Who is this person writing this book, and how are they reprogramming your children? And I may just have to buy a copy of this book because I want to know what they're saying, because I'm sure whatever it is, it's crap. And speaking of programming you, Janet Jackson, many of you have hopefully heard because I reported on this, claims that she's now pregnant. Of course, it's through, artificial insemination and God only knows what else. But anyway, it says that she was spotted for the first time in full Islamic dress since announcing her pregnancy. So again, is she really pregnant, or is she just wearing this getup to imprint you with things? And maybe, she's got one of those fake baby bumps under there and somebody else is carrying her child. If it is her child, it's bizarre what's happening in the world. This is a show. It says the star is believed to have become a Muslim after marrying Qatari billionaire Wissam Al-Mana, 41, in 2012. Well, she's been dressing like half naked, and that's not the way a Muslim woman dresses until she's now in this getup after announcing she's pregnant. It says apparently they met, this couple, in 2010, but their liaison was kept so under wraps that barely anyone knew they were a couple until a year after they had wed. And that, I guess, it says believed to have wed in 2012. That means 2013 people began to know that they were a couple. And again, a lot of these things are just that people are put together for whatever show they want to put on for you at the moment. So, and speaking of shows, this one I thought, again, totally bizarre. This is my last one. I know it's been long, so thank you for sitting through this with me. But there was a lot of news this week. Beyonce. Did you hear about this one? That according to the articles, her hair got caught up on her earring, tore it from her ear, and caused plenty of blood to flow during a live performance. And you know what? I don't believe this. It says apparently she was singing some song called Haunted. Well, gee, doesn't that make sense that then her blood would flow? So they had a video on there and they said, you know, be careful because it's very graphic. Well, I looked and the only thing that was graphic was one of her fans cutting his ear off. That was graphic. I didn't see any blood come off of her. After the performance, Twitter and Facebook was ablaze with hashtag cut for Beyonce and hashtag bleed for Beyonce. The so-called Beehive or Bayhive, a name that describes the once Christian singer's fan base, I didn't even know she was once a Christian singer, fan base mostly of women and gay men who obsessed over her stardom, started cutting themselves in a show of unity with the singer. It's really, now again, I'm going to refer back to True World History. If you know about the Merovingians and a lot of other things, which actually Stuart and I talked about in our September Spectacular, beehives and bees and things like that have a lot of Illuminati global handler significance. So why do they call themselves bayhives or beehives? And why does she call herself Queen Bee? Because here it says, if Queen Bee had to endure pain, so do I. Tonight we cut for Beyonce. So it says, this is not speculation. Gruesome, bloody photos have cropped up on social media revealing her fans are bleeding for her along with these type of comments. It says, cutting is a dark trend that's suddenly making its way into their limelight. And what is cutting and how serious is it? Cutting is a form of deliberate self-harm, self-inflicted violence in which people take a razor blade or other sharp object and cut into their flesh to the point of letting blood. So this is part of New World Religion. I will tell you that right now. She obviously is a programming icon, as are most of these kind of people that are out there like this. But again, if you want to know more, True World History, and we did talk about it in September, and we will be putting out a new book after we get caught up on some of these other books that have been kind of held up for a while due to various circumstances. So, you know, if you haven't read Blue Blood, I suggest that you read this one as well, get caught up on your history. And of course, back in 2002, True Reality of Sexuality. So this will give you something to think about versus what's going on in the media. And you know what? Don't allow yourself to be imprinted. We have a lot of books and information out there that will help you find out what's going on in the world. And as I've mentioned here recently, and I just had a very recent conversation today, don't trust anybody but yourself. Find out who and what you are for yourself. Self, oversoul, God, mind. Go to your source, whatever you think your source is. But don't pay attention to all this crap that's going on in the world. It's ridiculous, utterly ridiculous. It is such a show. It's just totally amazing to me what's out there. Anyway, Stuart will be in Australia after his birthday. He'll be home for a few days. We'll have a nice celebration for that. Then he'll be off to Australia. So any of you who wanted to go to Australia, be sure this is an opportunity for you to go. If you're already there, hey, Australia's a big country, but it's a lot easier than coming here. We do have Australian clients that come here. It's a long trip. So if you always wanted to see him, Australia, check out the website for details. Then we have our next big event coming up in January, our week-long Hyperspace Oversoul Extravaganza. That is our most intense class of the entire year. So be here for that in January 2017. Get a hold of Patricia at customersupport.com if you want to come. Like our Facebook pages, our fan pages, join our membership site because we do a lot of deep work. In fact, we are doing a free group blog fast that will be getting, well, by the time you see this, we will be in progress with that. But we do these once a month till the end of the year, and people have been getting fantastic results because there is a very deep spiritual reason for fasting, which we discuss. And of course, my self-healing group webinars are starting another session in November. We have those for as well on pay-per-view. I think with your membership discounts around $14 or something like that. So it's like, don't tell me you can't afford it, because how can you not afford to know who you are in this kind of culture, really? Just is astounding. So again, thank you for joining me. Janet Diane Moria Swerdlow, expansions.com. Bye-bye.